rather than just trying to work towards that perfectly polished campaign and rolling that out like, oh, we're going live in 6 months. And so we got to get it perfect by then. Like having that, we launched it, we're testing it, we're constantly polishing it is the mindset shift.
Hey, Colin, thanks so much for joining on this chat today. I feel like we live in a really interesting era right now where there's expectations for us to move so fast, and especially with AI, we can move really fast, but then there's also the other side of wanting perfection or wanting things to be really, really good before we launch. So I feel like we're kind of balancing these two different sides of the coin, right? But what have you found that helps people shift the mindset from going maybe to planning to launching?
Yeah, honestly, this aligns really well with one of my favorite core values of marketers in demand, which is to make it a nine. To be completely honest, perfection in marketing is somewhat unattainable. You are constantly testing new things, trying to find something new. Even when you find something that is working amazing, you can't put all your eggs in that basket because there's going to be a shift in the market. There's going to be a competitor that comes in. There's going to be someone that copies the exact play that you're making and maybe undercuts your price. There's so many different issues that can pop up. And so I would say striving for perfection is just a challenge in its own. But back to your main question of like shifting from planning to launching, you kind of need to switch from that architect mindset to like an engineer mindset. And what I mean by that is like, I love analogies. I'm always going to dive into these. Architects can like sketch things forever. They have the perfect lines, the rulers are there, like everything is fit to a T. But engineers know that like nothing really counts unless you start building these things, right? So, in practical terms, that means that we need to treat every launch that we have as a live experiment. It's not like a final exam that you're taking. Like version one is your hypothesis. You're eager to test it out, find what's valid, what's invalid. It's not like a monument that you've built that you're like, I really hope this works. And if it cracks, then everything fails. It's all data to use. And so when your whole team adapts that mindset, the question flips from, is this perfect? Meaning like, is it perfect right now and we can launch it, to, is this testable? And that's where you can start to get a lot of velocity in your marketing campaigns and really get into what is working and what do we need to test next.
Yeah, I really like that mindset shift because sometimes we talk to people and they think, oh, we're going to do this one really big campaign this year and it's going to get us all our leads. When really it's a lot more successful if you think of, okay, this is the first iteration of the campaign and we're every quarter or every month, we're going to make tweaks and just keep improving it as we go.
Absolutely.
So, how do you define the line between preparation and procrastination?
Yeah, I mean, this carries in all facets of life, but if we're really focusing on marketing, there's like, you need to know what is the risk ceiling, but also what is the learning floor. And so the risk ceiling are like the things that you really have to be cognizant of. So if these are wrong, it's going to break like trust in your audience, or you're going to have compliance issues, depending on what your business is. It could be like security issues. Maybe some messaging doesn't represent your pricing accurately, or you come up with really solid brand messaging, but this campaign that you've built doesn't adequately or accurately summarize all of that. You need to clear those before you can move forward. But then there's the learning floor. And that's where you need to ask yourself, if we launch this now, is it going to teach us something that we couldn't learn in the lab? And if the answer is yes, then every day of that thing being live is how you get more and more polished. And you're just going to continue to learn. So when you put those things together, you have the ceiling, you have the floor, you're operating in a really nice space. And so once all of those, like, we can't go live with this issues are fixed, and you're actually capturing new data with all of the things that you've launched, then you can really say like any delays that you run into are really just procrastination, because you have really mitigated, like, we're not running into this major issue, and now we can just say we're constantly testing new things.
Yeah. I think sometimes I hear objections to launching quickly. Like, I think the two ones I hear the most is they're worried about budget and also their brand recognition, or their people are going to see them in a negative light. But I think there's ways that you can do this like really scrappy. You don't have to spend a lot of budget to just get things launched. Like you could start small, test, and then expand your budget as things start to work. And then also, you don't have to launch campaigns to your entire audience. Like you can pick a small segment, test things with them, and still keep your brand reputation really good.
Absolutely. I mean, especially with budgets or new messaging, you need to pick a segment, exactly what you said, and don't just blow all of that budget and like, you know what, in my mind, this is going to work, because you need real world data and you need to see how people interact with the things that you're putting out there. And then you can make decisions like, all right, well, we've pushed this as much as we can. It's really working. We're just running into a budgeting issue. So like, yeah, maybe you
Yeah.
need to put some more budget into it, or we're seeing people engage, but they're not actually like converting. So, okay, you still need to work on some messaging, or maybe the landing page you're sending people to need some work before you're actually putting more budget in. So like, there's a lot of different factors that go into the decisions that you're making.
Yeah. So then why is I feel like you've already touched on this a little bit, but why is launching the fastest way to learn? And but then like why do teams sometimes resist this?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like any marketer would say a good whiteboard session is just such a good time, right? I mean, you're essentially like working in the lab. You're like, in my mind, this is what everyone wants to hear. I know my product so well. I know my service so well, and I know the pain points that this person is feeling. But real people in real environments will expose different cases that that lab or that whiteboard will never account for. It could be even just like tiny things like, we made a weak connection of how we resonate with their pain point, or maybe we have a really weird workflow or user journey. Maybe we run into like some unexpected objections that someone has. And all of those things are like, you need to test in the real world to understand what's happening and how to get around that, or how to build a solution for it. And those come within hours after launching, sometimes definitely within weeks. And then you keep just going back and forth and iterating, rather than always trying to stay on the whiteboard and perfect and account for everything. And I think teams resist it because when you launch something, it almost feels like judgment day. You're like, all right, I finally got approval to get this thing live. And if this doesn't work right away, I'm in trouble. It might not only be like trouble that you feel with your leadership, or trouble with how users are going to resonate with all of the messaging and everything that you've put together, but you're like missing that rational desire to collect data. And so I think like another mindset shift to go through is, I'm not launching something, like I'm not just going live, I'm opening a beta, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like when you're rolling out a new piece of software, you open a beta because you need to collect actual data that your team, who understands your product in and out, or your service or whatever you're putting out there, knows to a T. The people you're putting it out to, they don't know it as well as you. So you need to like collect some real life information. And switching, I think, to that opening a beta mindset is really going to like get the team all on the same page about that.
Yeah. One of the books I have here on my shelf is called Nail It, Then Scale It. And it's for entrepreneurs, but I feel like it applies to marketing so well. But like beta test, just really practice a lot of things, do it small and scrappy, and then grow from there. So then what is one habit a team can prioritize to build momentum?
Yeah, it really comes into the analysis and like the cadence of the analysis that you run. So when you launch something, I said it before, you can collect some data within hours. It's not always going to be usable, because whether you're launching to a segment or to your entire audience, like, you need more time for people to see the message, to engage with things in different ways, to collect actually viable data. But then you get into like, all right, well, now I'm going to review it at a week pace, or I'm going to review it every 2 weeks or every month. But if you have a consistent pace of reviewing data as people are interacting with whatever you're putting out there for your campaign, and then launching another test, and then at that same cadence, launching another test. Like if you hold yourself to like, I'm going to analyze this data and I'm always going to launch something new to see what works better, then you're going to continue to just almost effortlessly evolve to like that near perfect campaign. And when you have that habit, it's going to help you like tighten your scope. You're going to collaborate a lot faster with all of the different stakeholders on the team. And you're going to be able to celebrate the progress that's being made, because you're looking at it in such smaller increments and seeing like, oh, this did take a jump in engagement, or we got a lot of clicks on this type of messaging, or we saw some conversions come through with this landing page. So rather than just trying to work towards that perfectly polished campaign and rolling that out like, oh, we're going live in 6 months, and so we got to get it perfect by then. Like having that, we launched it, we're testing it, we're constantly polishing it is the mindset shift.
Yeah, I think that jumps into this next question too, because as you jump into the data, even things that might feel like a loss can be a win because it informs your next decision. If you notice an ad or an email didn't get any responses or traffic, you're like, okay, now we know that message doesn't work. We can try something new. So how should teams respond when an imperfect launch doesn't go as planned?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like you said. So having something turn out successful, that data is honestly as useful as testing something else out that did not go well. You need to know what works, but you also need to know what doesn't work. And I think that the way to respond to these things is to take emotion out of it. And we're creative people, right? We use a lot of data and like it's an interesting mix, but we need to like take away our personal feel to that messaging we wrote or that landing page that we built that we felt so proud of, and just stick to the facts. So like what actually happened? What went wrong? What did we learn? Are we calling out there's some good things? Are we calling out there's some bad things? What is the data point that we can indicate that is the one thing we need to fix? Because if you fix like 10 things at once, you're really not going to know what fix made the biggest impact. And so you need to like prioritize those. You need to assign it out to your team or yourself, whoever's working on these things, pick a launch time to like get that next test in, and then communicate openly with your team and especially the stakeholders and like, hey, here are the changes we made. Here's what we heard from the user that was experiencing this and not converting. And here's what we're doing next. And so like transparency can kind of turn like that awkward, like wobbling phase into like trust equity. You're building like a rapport with your stakeholders and saying, I'm taking this information and I'm turning it into something useful, and I'm going to keep iterating on that.
This is a great way too to test different, what's the word, like hypotheses. Like sometimes you might have someone on your management who thinks, hey, I think this type of campaign will do really well. And maybe you're, I think this type of campaign, you can A/B test it. And that is a great way to say, oh yeah, your hypothesis was right. Or, hey, mine works better. It's a lot easier to have those conversations when you've actually tested it and you can see data.
100%. And it builds transparency and it builds rapport, and you run those against each other. You see a winner. Maybe the next test is like a mix of those two things, right? Or maybe like you just pick like one thing out of each and build another variant. You can never get too complacent with what you're running because, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, there's always going to be a new competitor, a new issue with compliance, a new price point that you got to hit, a new pain point that someone is feeling. Like you can never get too comfortable with what you're doing. And kind of back to like the main point of all of it is progress beats perfection. And because the market is moving while we are polishing and trying to reach that perfection. So if we launch and we listen and then we just iterate and repeat that whole process, that loop is where all of the advantages are going to come from.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for wrapping that up so nicely. I completely agree with you. We should strive to launch and get things moving rather than focusing on perfecting anything.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me, Baylee.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks for checking out Tech Qualified. This show is brought to you by New North, a marketing agency that helps turn your small, scrappy marketing team into a growth engine. To find out more about New North or check out more episodes of this show, go to newnorth.com/techqualified.